So, here we are. Brand new year, brand new display, same old retard on the internet. And of course, as I discussed on the live stream last week, new year means new anime, and I'm going to quickly highlight some of the ones that I'm really excited for this year. And look, there were a lot of anime that I found while I was digging that I was really excited for. And I figured out that I was not going to be able to cover all of that in one video, because I couldn't even cover it in one stream. I tried that last week. It didn't work. Ended up having to speed run all of that. And after a lot of cutting and paring down, I finally got it to about 11 titles that I'm really excited for, things I'm looking forward to. Now, I tried to keep it to titles that aren't completely ambiguous as to what their actual content is going to be and when their release date is. There are some with unknown release dates, but we do know generally whether they're going to be an actual season or a movie or some other form of animation. Now, the first of these is Mission Yozakura Family, or Yozakura Family. I don't know exactly the pronunciation on that one. Either way, it's a spy family-esque kind of series, more shonen, a little bit more comedy, about a kid who ends up getting inducted into this family of spies because he's in love with his childhood friend. And she just so happens to be the head of this family. And of course, because he's now a part of it, he kind of has to learn the ropes of being a spy and an assassin, learn to fight, protect himself, all while his friend's older brother tries to find ways to kill him. The characters, as far as how they're written, are a little bit larger than life than they would be in something like Spy Family, but it kind of lends to this idea of a family of super spies living under everyone's noses. Still, I feel like the series could be fun comedy, it's a little bit of romance too going on in there, and has the potential to have some really cool action sequences as well. I have read about the first 3 volumes of the manga, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it, even though I didn't expect to. There's also some parts of the overarching plot that you will probably see coming, but do lend to a much broader story than just the idea of the Yozakura family themselves. It incorporates some of the things that happened to the main character in his past and gives him a reason to really pursue the path of being a spy. Regardless, I still enjoyed the manga and I'm looking forward to seeing it being adapted into an anime. So, here's to that. Number 10 on my list is Metallic Rouge, an OVA series brought to us by Studio Bones, who is, if you don't know, responsible for bringing us My Hero Academia. Shut up, dumbass! At least, the first 4 seasons that were actually good. The story follows an android girl in a world where humans and androids live side by side, as she's on a mission to protect humanity from several androids who pose a huge threat to humans. Now, as far as everything that you can see from the trailer, premise, story, world, animation, all of it looks pretty solid, but the fact that it's an OVA means it's pretty much a wild card. You don't really have anything to go off of. And as far as Bones is concerned, they did really good work with the first 4 seasons of My Hero Academia, at least before the fandom started to drag the whole series down. So it's going to be interesting to see this one, and maybe it's just a bit of an obsession with the novelty of it, but I do really look forward to this one. Number 9 on this list is one of my favorite B-tier trash isekai series ever created. The Eminence in Shadow Lost Echoes. Surprisingly, after the release of Season 2, they've opted to do the final part of the 4th novel as a movie. Basically, in this arc, Shadow leaps through a teleporter and ends up in some very unusual circumstances. I'll try not to spoil you because it actually does a lot to develop the world of the Eminence in Shadow and make it a lot more intriguing than it had been up to that point. Now, I do admit that this series is no masterpiece, but hell if it ain't entertaining. When you really get down to it, it's nothing more than a wildly entertaining power fantasy with a kid who has a serious case of Chunibyo and Batman wannabe syndrome running amok in a world full of fantasy elements like magic and dragons. Still, I thought it had a bit of a different take on using magic, and it had a pretty interesting world with some intriguing lore implications. With the stuff that this movie will cover, I think they have a chance to make a pretty good movie out of it. At the very least, it'll be fun in the same way a John Wick film would be. Number 8 on the list is The Unwanted Undead Adventurer. In a strange twist of irony, the novel series I almost dropped after the first book because I didn't think it was all that great, ended up being one of my more anticipated anime of the year this year. The Unwanted Undead Adventurer is the story of a 25-year-old man by the name of Rent Fina who happens to have absolutely no skill as an adventurer and has spent a decade at the bottom of the ladder. Still, though, some strangely fortuitous events occur and he ends up getting the power of not only just leveling up because he's become undead, but becoming even more powerful versions of monsters. And due to that, he finally has the ability to pursue his dream of becoming a Mithril class adventurer. Whatever that's supposed to mean. Now, at first glance, it really looks like the stereotypical dungeon-crawling Japanese fantasy series, but it felt a whole lot more loved than a lot of the other ones that I had read or watched. Especially as I got deeper into it and realized that the world had a lot of information built into it, and every little detail actually meant something. It wasn't just thrown out there because. I think it has a chance to kind of go alongside Frieren as another really well-written, entertaining non-isekai fantasy series. The only disadvantage this one really has is it kind of slow rolls its huge overarching plot for several novels worth of material. You'll probably only get a couple of those books, and you don't even really understand just how deep it gets until like the 8 or 9 mark. Again, I wouldn't say it's god tier like Frieren, but as an example of a good Japanese fantasy that doesn't require some sort of isekai bullshit, I think it's pretty good. And the trailer certainly gives me hope that it'll get the animation love I feel like this one deserves. It's surprisingly a fun series, and one that I didn't expect I'd love this much. And number 7 on my list here is the Chainsaw Man Riz arc, and hell, it wouldn't be another list if I didn't at least mention my boy Pochita getting a movie. I honestly wasn't expecting to see much of Chainsaw Man after the disastrously bad performance of its Blu-ray sales, but it seems like MAPPA is trucking ahead with the adaptation of the Riz arc, the next big happening in the Chainsaw Man plot. And they've decided to go with a movie instead of another season. And now, that makes me happy because I'm a personal fan of Chainsaw Man. I won't be the one to tell you that it's like peak fiction or the greatest thing since sliced bread, but I do enjoy it. I say it's a good action series if you want nothing more than some cool fights. And since they're doing a movie, I have yet to be let down by a MAPPA movie, so hey. All I want from this series is some well-animated violence and gore, and I'll be happy. That said, I don't think it offers a huge amount of entertainment as far as plot goes, because if you've watched Chainsaw Man, you've kind of seen the whole story right there. Denji just wants to touch some boobs, and I've never identified with the protagonist more. The next on my list, number 6, is Solo Leveling. Obviously, this is one of the biggest titles of the season, and it will probably be one of the biggest titles of the year. And I think it deserves that because I've read the manga, I think the story's good, and it offers a fair bit of chance for them to really wow me with an action scene and some animation. If you're not familiar, Solo Leveling follows the story of Sung Jin-woo, who is the lowest rank hunter in all of Korea. Now, through some really bad circumstances, he ends up getting killed on one of his missions, but it enables him to become a part of the whole dungeon system that's wreaking havoc on the world. And because of that, by becoming the player, he gains the ability to, you guessed it, level up, hence the title of the series. I won't say that Solo Leveling is like the deepest story or most like amazing, compelling set of characters, but it's an effective and simple story. It's just about a guy using his new powers to try and rectify some of the shit in his life. Honestly speaking, the trailers did not do a lot of good for my wanting to watch this series. It was up and down, and I didn't know whether I was actually going to enjoy it or not, but The last one at least demonstrated some of the things I was looking for in the series. And that would have been some level of dynamic fight scenes instead of just freeze framing things or just motion blurring the background while keeping the protagonist still in the center of the screen. That doesn't mean there isn't plenty of time for A1 Studios to biff this, but right now it's looking pretty good. And at number 5, we have Kaiju number 8. The big monsters genre returns with an interesting bit of twist to it, as Kaiju number 8 actually follows a character who has the power to turn into a kaiju. Kefka Hibino has had absolutely no luck in joining the Defense Force and fighting against the kaiju himself. Instead, he's left kind of cleaning up after everyone else's mess, up until one bug-looking kaiju crawls into his mouth and he suddenly finds himself transforming. Honestly, I've loved the manga for this one, and I'm 2 volumes behind right now and need to catch up. Still, as far as a story goes, it's really only going to be entertaining on the surface level. It's going to be a lot of flash and splendor, but there's no real deep meaning to the story. Still, a good, fast-paced action shonen is always well appreciated, especially if it's treated properly. This one has the opportunity to kind of be a juggernaut and really show some of the other shonens how things are done as far as just being straight up entertaining for the flash spectacle kind of stuff. The trailers so far make it look pretty good, and what they've done as far as animating action sequences in motion has me impressed. I'm really liking it so far. At number 4 on the list, I have Dandadan. Now, if you had told me a few years back that I would be interested in a story that is a romance between 2 kids in high school as they fight off cryptids, aliens, and ghosts, I don't know how I would have responded to that. So yes, when I say this series is wild, I mean it, because it's really just gonna go there if it feels like it. Hell, the first arc of the story has been chasing someone's balls around. No, I don't mean like bouncy balls. Either way, it may not have some like big deep story, kind of like Kaiju number 8, but its characters are pretty well written if you ask me, and the overall story about 2 people just sort of finding a place where they both fit in with each other is pretty good. Plus, it offers the opportunity to do some really cool looking action sequences, and I'm always down for that because, as you might have noticed, I'm a bit obsessed with really good animated action sequences. Number 3 on the list is Konosuba Season 3. And honestly, I have been looking forward to this one since the day it was announced. Never have I laughed harder than when I was watching Konosuba at 2 a.m. in my room trying not to wake up everyone else in the house. I mean, seriously, you have a gang of misfits who all have their own really, really crazy, unique personalities and powers, trying to take on the world's greatest evils, and it's just overall a great flippin' time. Ultimately, though, it is the greatest parody of the isekai genre ever, and totally worth watching, because I never stopped laughing while I was watching that series. Though, you definitely do need to lock yourself behind a door for certain episodes. Basically, the main character is a piece of shit, everyone else in his party is almost useless, and the only people who can do things rarely do them daily. I don't really think it should be any surprise that an Aka Akasaka series makes it into the second seat of this list, especially when it's Oshinoko Season 2. If the first season of Oshinoko didn't absolutely rip my heart to pieces, well, here's Season 2 to do it again. Honestly, the first season was one of the most superb anime of 2023, and I'm really glad to see it getting more. And if you don't know, it's kind of a dark dive into the entertainment industry. Basically, you're following 2 twins, and one of them is going out of his way to do all these things for his own personal vendetta, and the other one just wants to fulfill her dream of being an idol. It's another great work of fiction from Akasaka, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how this whole plot thickens, and what information is going to come out to tell us what's actually happening with the overarching plot. I won't spoil any of it, because it's better if you just go into it blind. It's great that way. Now, of course, because this is my list, The return of one of my favorite animes of all time is going to easily be number one, and that is ReZero Season 3. Back when this was announced, I couldn't have been more happy to see that the series was finally continuing. I fell in love with it instantly because of the darker tones in storytelling, just how brutal it could be, and the overall state of the world and the story it was telling. Now, this season is going to be covering what it looks like is the Watergate City arc, and there is a lot that happens in that arc. This part of the story is going to make things go wild, and there is going to be a lot of the return to the witches cult stuff that happened in season 1. I'm really looking forward to seeing them tackle this arc because there are a lot of things that are going to be cool, like seeing Reinhardt back in the story again, having Wilhelm back. Really, just about every character in the series is going to be in this one. Of course, you also get some information that's particularly interesting about other characters, and you kind of learn that some people aren't as unique as you would think they are. Seriously, from like the dark, psychologically scarring aspect of what Subaru has to go through in order to save the people close to him, to the overall really good emotional tones that the series carries, I don't really have a reason to complain about getting more ReZero. Again, this is like my second favorite anime I've ever watched, and I'm really happy that it's getting a season 3. But I think that's about enough rambling out of me for now, so please consider hitting those magic buttons down below that say like and subscribe, because those simple but free actions do really help me. I hope to see you in the next one, so later.